Okay, so this would be the section 6.2 notes, but we were talking about part 3. So if we want to find the exact values, so here we go. First of all, 5 pi. You should know that that goes around a couple of times. So what we want to do is we want to subtract 2 pi from this. Why do we want to do that? Because 2 pi gets rid of a revolution. So that gives me 3 pi. So the sign of 5 pi is the exact same thing as the sign of 3 pi. But I can subtract 2 pi from that again and get rid of another whole revolution and simply get the sign of pi. So these are all equivalent. 5 pi looks exactly the same as 3 pi, which looks exactly the same as pi. And remember, pi is right here. That point is -1, 0. What is the sign of pi? The sign of pi is simply 0. We can do something like that here too. We're at -540. Well, if I want to bring that into the unit circle on our original unit circle, we can simply add 360. But if you think about it, if I add 360, that's not going to get me a positive angle, which is what I would really like. But what happens if I add 2 times 360, or 720? If I do that, this becomes the cosine of, and -540 plus 720 is 180 degrees. So the cosine of -540 is the same thing as the cosine of 180. I already have my picture up here. The cosine of 180 is -1. Okay, so you've had trig and parts of trig before, so you know you really have to know these special values. So I'm going to post online a copy of the unit circle, and we'll fill it all in, or maybe I'll fill it in and then I'll post a picture of that for you as well to help you, but that will help you memorize the unit circle. All right, so how about the sign of pi force? Well, we have it on the chart. You know that pi force is that √2 over √2 times the cosine of pi. Well, we just figured out the cosine of pi because that's the same thing as 180, so that's -1. And then it says we're going to subtract from that the sine of 3 pi halves. Remember, 3 pi halves is right here. The sine is the y, so that means minus -1. So if I multiply this by -1, I get -√2 over 2, and minus a negative is +1. Yes, they want you to do the algebra. So we're going to get a common denominator, so top and bottom have to be multiplied by 2 here. So that's going to give me -√2 plus 2 all over 2. Pause this whenever you want. All right, the tangent of pi force, well, remember that's √2 over √2. No, √2 over 2 over √2 over 2. The tangent of pi force is 1. Times the sine of pi 6 is 1/2. And I'm getting these because I know my unit circle. You guys have to work on that. Minus the sine of negative pi. Well, negative pi is over here at -1, 0, and the sine is 0, times the cosine of pi thirds is 1/2. So when all is said and done, this is just 1/2. Okay, well, I want the secant of pi. So again, here's pi. That point is at -1, 0. The secant is the reciprocal of the cosine, and the x is the cosine. So the reciprocal of -1 is going to be -1, minus, I want the cosecant of pi halves. Well, there's pi halves. And the cosecant is the reciprocal of the sine, so it would be the reciprocal of 1, which is just 1. So that's going to give me -2. oops, I almost lost example 4 up here. Okay, so example 4, they want you to use the calculator because, of course, 15 degrees is not on your unit circle. So if I'm going to do that, to find the cosec or the cosine of 15, make sure your mode is in degrees. And then if I just find the cosine of 15 degrees, whoopsie. Well, let's try that again. The cosine of 15 degrees. That's going to be, does it tell us where to round? It says to 2 decimal places, so 0.97. Now, if you look at these, the last two, B and C, are both in radians. This does not have a degree symbol, so that's radians. So I need to go ahead and go into my mode and go back into radians. So if I want the tangent of pi 12ths, that'd be the tangent of pi divided by 12. And you should be getting 0.27. Now, if I want the secant of 10, that is 1 over the cosine of 10. So that's how you should plug it into your calculator. 1 divided by the cosine of 10. And again, you should still be in radians. And I'm getting negative 1.19. Okay. Now, this is where I'm going to take a little bit of poetic license. You are welcome to read this and go over it. I am just going to go ahead and fill in the chart because, quite honestly, the chart is going to be the same as what we had done before. So my sign is always y over. Now, in this case, though, what they're saying is that what if you're not on the unit circle? So what if your radius is not 1? Well, then it's y over r. It's whatever your radius is. So this is basically saying opposite over hypotenuse. Remember SOHCAHTOA from way back when? That's what we're using here. Cosine is x over r. So it's adjacent over hypotenuse. Tangent is y over x. So since that doesn't relate at all to the radius, it's the same. Cosecant is r over y. So it's just the reciprocal of the sine. Secant would be r over x. And then cotangent would be x over y. So again, they're just taking you off the unit circle. The unit circle is where radius is 1, so everywhere we do that, our r just turns into a 1. That's why the cosine is the x value, or the x-coordinate of the point. So they're just saying if you're not on the unit circle, then you have to use SOHCAHTOA. If you don't remember SOHCAHTOA, you might want to look that up. All right, so let's look at example 5. Find the exact value of each of the 6 trig functions of an angle, theta, if the point -3 or 3, -4 is on its terminal side. So here's what you're doing. Well, if I have the point 3, -4, that's taking me into this quadrant. And all they're saying is, okay, if this is the point 3, -4, now let's look at this triangle and let's find the 6 trig functions. Okay, so that means that this is 3, this is -4. If I use my Pythagorean theorem to find my other side, because I need that, that's my hypotenuse, I will get 5. Your hypotenuse should always be positive. So if I just want all of the 6 trig functions, well, the sine of my theta would be, now here's my theta, so my sine would be opposite over hypotenuse, so that would be -4/5. My cosine of theta would be adjacent over hypotenuse, which is positive 3/5. My tangent of my theta is opposite over adjacent, so I'm just using SOHCAHTOA. And then I can get my cosecant of my theta by just flipping my sign. My secant of my theta by finding the reciprocal of my cosine. And my cotangent of my theta by finding the reciprocal of the tangent. So again, they're just saying if you're not on the unit circle where the radius is 1, then just revert back to your SOHCAHTOA. All right, and that's the end of the notes for 6.2.